Welcome to the Dutch Game Garden Incubation Talks. My name is Eline. I'm Communications Manager at Dutch Game Garden. And today we are at Gamescom 2018 talking to Stephen Hay. Stephen, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, certainly. So I'm Stephen Hay. My company is Hey Stephen Hay, because I'm a massive egotist, and so I called it after myself. And I do freelance marketing for video game indie developers. That's what I've always done, really, and that's what I do now.
I heard that you previously were a marketing director at EA. Can you tell me a little bit about the difference doing marketing for like a large AAA studio versus the indies that you help right now?
Certainly, yes. So I was marketing director for one of the EA studios called Chillingo. It's great. It's a very kind of luxurious position to be in when you're working with somebody like EA, because obviously they have huge teams of market research people. They have resources in terms of being able to acquire users, and they have lots of big communities kind of ready-made for gamers. When you're an indie, obviously you haven't got those facilities. You usually don't have much in the way of marketing spend or resources, so it's harder. I think you need to be cleverer, basically. So you need to really work out very early on who you're making your game for, the kind of things that will excite that consumer. Why are they playing games? What do they want to get out of your game? And if you can think about those things very early on, then you start to build a game which is not easy to market, but easier to market, because you're building hooks in that you think will resonate with the audience. So if you're building kind of like a first-person shooter, you must think about, well, what do people want from first-person shooters? And some people just want to win. Some people want to play with friends. And then other people want to win, but also be able to shout about it very loudly. Then if you can start thinking about those things, then you can already building marketing hooks that when you come to take the game to market, you're already, you've got an advantage already.
How do you actually find out what people want?
So there's some things on there's things on the internet already. So if you look at, I think there's a thing called Bartle's taxonomy, which is a segmentation of game players. And if you use that as a base, if you look at the segmentations that people like EA are using and Sony are using, they're not that different from those segmentations. And then the other thing that you can do is, really speak to people who really are fans of games that you're benchmarking, and you really interview them and ask them, what is it? Why are you playing it? What is it about them? Because everybody will, when you first ask, they will just say, because I love the game. And you say, no, what really do you, people love Fortnite, but they love the game, but also they love the fact that they're playing with their friends, they're playing with pals, they're achieving something in a very short space of time. They're not being punished by the game so much, they're being punished by themselves. So you can start to work out what that segment wants and what excites them, and then how can I make my game different into a new experience, but it still addresses those wants.
Of course, with marketing, I think a lot of indies have trouble figuring out what percentage of the budget they should spend on marketing. Do you have any advice for them?
The kind of standard advice, as I would always say, really, in theory, you want to be spending about 20% of your production budget. In practice, and I think developers always put kind of zero or 5,000 euros and really underestimate what they might need. So what I would say is try to make sure you have some budget there. Maybe 20% is unrealistic for indies, but maybe between 5 and 10%, because you're putting a lot of effort into it, and really lots of games disappear, so you don't want that. So if you put it in that perspective, then 5 or 10% isn't a lot, because otherwise you're gambling 100% of your effort on a win or lose. Whereas if you say, okay, I'm going to take 10% and help that increase my odds of winning, well then it kind of starts to make sense. And then think about what you're going to spend that money on. So the kind of thing I do is help companies out at a strategic stage, but then also help them out actually putting a marketing plan in place, working on the strategy, identifying the audiences, but then doing all the practical things like writing blog posts, writing your metadata, briefing in video, maybe working with PR agencies or influencer agencies.
Right.
Indies can do this if they put the money aside, and they don't need to spend masses and masses and masses of money, because you can find smaller companies who will help you do it. You know, I'm a one-man band. I know 1 or 2 man band PR agencies. Probably as a game developer, you haven't got those specialist skills. So it's best to think about where your game fits. Your game might need influencer activity more than it might need PR activity.
Right.
Your game might need a really good video. Actually, the majority of games need really good video material.
Yeah, makes sense.
And you can probably make a video, so that's cool. But think about somebody who you can pay, you know, €5,000 or €4,000 to make a really good video, you know, because a really good video is a really powerful asset. So I would say to anybody, if they had only a tiny bit of money, spend it on video. Then I would say spend it on me. Spend it on kind of strategy and your metadata. Then move out to PR and influencers. I think that's the kind of priority I would think about. And think about your key art as well. Again, most developers are really good at creating images, really good at creating aesthetics, but can they create a piece of art which could go on your box front, which could go on your pack front, which looks amazing, which looks killer, which draws people in? And that is a real skill as well. So have a think about, are there people that I know in my network who are great graphic designers, not necessarily game designers, but that can create compelling works of art, or can even brief in a compelling piece of art? Make something that looks good, tiny, it's going to look good on a dashboard of Xbox Store and PlayStation Store, as well as on your fantastic monitor in the office. Think about what the consumer is seeing.
I was wondering, what are the most common mistakes that you see developers make when it comes to marketing?
I think common mistakes are certainly with video and assets. I think
Right.
kind of assuming that they know what the best part of a game is, the best part of a video game is, how they, when they capture video, that they're capturing the best video because actually I'm playing it really well here. Whereas sometimes actually playing it really badly can look better, It sounds counterintuitive, but sometimes being defeated in a game looks spectacular, and winning in a game looks a bit boring and dull, So think about the assets that you're creating and the things that you're pulling out of a game.
I guess
to
that
give a video
also
editor.
has to do with the player type, right? I mean, somebody who is really looking for a challenge, maybe really engaged with like a video of a defeat.
Yes, yeah. Well, they might do, because they know, well, I can do better than that.
Right, yeah.
And you want like hordes of enemies. And there's a great guy, Derek Liu, I think he's called, Leiu. He's made a video called How to Capture Gameplay for Game Trailers. So it's not how to make game trailers, it's how to capture gameplay. And this video is on YouTube, it's on his channel. It's the single greatest piece of advice I've seen for indies, so definitely look him up.
So can you tell us a little bit about your day-to-day activities that you do for indie studios, and of course how does that compare to your experience in Chilingo?
Sure, yeah. So day-to-day, I work with several different types of clients. One is indies, and I work on projects, and generally I will work kind of 3 days on an indie game project. Helps me really work out what the game is, work out what the developer wants to achieve, work out if the developer is doing the right thing, and maybe re-steer the developer and change their strategy, and really formulate a strategy for the game then. And that's coming up with describing the game, a language to describe the game, which is typically called like an X statement or an elevator statement. Then the pillars that support that, which are the things that are true about the game, which make the X statement real, which will make that come to life and will evidence it, So we know what the game is now, we know what is true about the game, we know what is exciting about the game. How do we sell it? What's our strategy? And that might be we're going to go for a mass market strategy, maybe we're going to go for a real niche, maybe we're going to try and create some kind of cult feel around this, or we're trying to hook into something which is a bigger thing which is kind of in the air, in the zeitgeist at the moment. or we're going to do something completely different and disruptive, which is a lot harder when you've got no budget. But you can kind of be, you can be inventive, you can be kind of cheeky, you can be creative. If you've got very little budget, you can still do that. It helps if you've got a few $1 million, but most indies haven't. So the first 2 days is usually kind of research, coming up with a strategy, and then the third day may be about doing the practical things like writing metadata, coming up with search terms, briefing in, saying your video needs to look like this, your screenshots need to look like this. Those very practical things that a developer will need to make sure that their deck presence is really stand out, is amazing.
How do you really decide the target audience of a game? Do you only look at the player types, or do you look at other games?
Yeah, so we look at the game, who they're benchmarking, so the other games that they're aspiring to, that kind of game. And then I play the game very badly because I'm really bad at games. So.
Well, that's a good playtest.
Yeah, I'm really terrible at games. So, but I like to play all the games, that I work on to see what I get from the game, what resonates with me, and then from that, then I can normally work with the developers to define an audience type, So an example is I worked on a great card game called Insane Robots by a company called Planiac. I've played a lot of card games. I've never really enjoyed them that much because it's just not my kind of game, And I started to play this game, and really I kind of I was enjoying it, but it didn't feel like a card game, and I was doing all the card game mechanics, and I could kind of see this, and I thought, oh, damn you game, you kind of fooled me into playing a card game and enjoying it and loving it. And so, the angle we took with that is it's a kind of a card game for people who don't really like if you love card games, you will really love this, that's fine. But we wanted to bring in players who wouldn't normally play a card game because it doesn't feel like a card game. It kind of feels like, if you play Uno, and it doesn't feel like poker. But it's, Uno is a card game, it's just, but it doesn't feel like a conventional card game. What it does is it gives you another audience to go to. So guess what, you can go to this audience that doesn't normally play card games, but likes that kind of RTS kind of game, that kind of dungeon crawler kind of game.
Just focus on other things.
Yeah,
right.
With a combat element, and you could bring that in. The actual combat element happens to be card-based, but that's fine, it's not kind of swinging swords, it's more playing cards. But it feels very combative when you play it.
How do you typically reach your target demographic? Like, which channels do you use, for example?
Every demographic is kind of different, really, and the advantage of kind of identifying your audience is much less of a demographic in terms of they're kind of between 22 and 44, and they're male or female. If you can kind of identify people by they kind of may be into kind of culture, they may be into sport, they may be into other kinds of media. And if you can start identifying them by a lifestyle more than an age, then you can kind of start thinking about which channels are going to be more appropriate. If your game is really very aesthetically beautiful and very kind of, it looks poetic and gorgeous, well then maybe Instagram is a good channel because that's a great channel for visual kind of storytelling and that kind of thing. If your game is more social and maybe pitched at a bit of an older audience and maybe more casual, then Facebook is a great audience. If your game is maybe multiplayer, I'm really kind of generalizing here, but if your game is kind of multiplayer or very combative, well then kind of Twitch and video on demand streaming, that's where we should be looking.
Right.
So they're really, that's not very nuanced, but
it's about analyzing the lifestyle and behavior.
Yeah, think about where those people are and what they're doing and what they're playing.
But how important is press still in this age of YouTube and Twitch? Do news sites and reviews still matter?
They do still matter, I think. The magazine sites still matter. I think they still build a buzz. Even if the only people who are looking at those sites are the people who are controlling the decks, publishers read those sites, people at Xbox read those sites, people at Apple read those sites. So it's important, I think.
It's more indirectly reaching business people, for example.
It may be, and there's still there's still a consumer audience that reads those sites. It's a lot smaller, but those people are opinion leaders, and they're the kind of people whose friends will, oh my friend, my friend Hans, he's really into games. He knows what's coming up, and that opinion leadership which drips down still happens and still matters. So you still need to be on those sites. So don't worry too much that they haven't got the big audiences anymore. They've got quite important audiences.
Then last question is, could you share your top 3 business tips that you would share with new startups?
Don't be afraid to approach Apple, don't be afraid to approach Microsoft, or if you've got a great idea, put it in front of people, really don't be shy, put your talent out there. Don't be don't be overly arrogant, but don't be shy. 2, don't rely on, if you're a shy person who doesn't really want to put themselves out there, that's fine, but you just be yourself, you don't have to be this kind of larger than life kind of alpha male or alpha female. You don't have to be that in the games industry. You just be yourself. Let your talent shine. Let the game shine.
Be authentic.
Yeah, be authentic, because that's what people want. That's what people buy. And if that's shy person or whatever, that's fine. Lots of marketing people are not. They're kind of quite loud and outrageous. I'm not outrageous, but I'm quite loud sometimes. But you don't have to be that person to sell a game to somebody. You just have to love your game and transfer your passion, be viral in the passion for the game. I think that's important. I think that was 1 and 2 in 1, but I think secondly, just think about the gamer as well. Always try and put yourself in the shoes of the gamer. It'd be great if we could make games for ourselves, and some people do that and have amazing success, and I know Steven Spielberg makes movies for himself, but he's Steven Spielberg,
Right, yeah.
So always think about other people, always think about people who are going to come to your game and not be very competent about it, and not really understand what you're communicating. Help them into the game. Be generous with your time, be generous with what you're communicating in marketing, and lead people into your game. And once they get it, hopefully they'll get it and become an enthusiastic ambassador, just like you are.
If any of the indies startups want to work with you, where should they reach out to you? So
reach out to me. My website is heystevenhey.com.
Okay.
And there's forms on there, and then my email is Stephen with a PH at heystevenhey.com. So really easy. If you just remember that guy with a really big inflated ego, that's the place to go.
Cool. So to summarize, first of all, know your player, know the type of games that people want to play, and you should spend roughly 20% of your budget on marketing. And if you're gonna prioritize things, then do it on video. And then finally, of course, analyze your players' lifestyle, behavior, and choose the appropriate channels then to do marketing on those channels. That's a brief summary of our talk today. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you. Cool.